win is our desire. Coupled with a break, brew and a friend, bleed orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us, DNVR. We are DNVR.
We are DNVR. We are live from the DNVR Bar. Calm before the storm before big Nuggets Warriors game tonight. And of course, we're coming to you from Studio A, where today the A stands for a bit early, as in this is a bit early for this conversation, but early is a good thing in these types of conversations. We'll get to that here in just a second, but first a shout out to our presenting sponsor, MSU Denver Online, msudenver.edu/online, where you can go to scope out all they have to offer. And they have a lot to offer, including 750 total classes, 45 plus online and hybrid programs. There's really something for everyone over there. So check them out over at msudenver.edu/online.
My boys, what is going on? Like you said, Ryan, big playoff game in Bronco or for the Nuggets tonight. The bar is going to be popping, and we got Carter here joining us live for the first time. Welcome, Carter. Welcome everyone who's tuning in live or on the podcast.
Hell yeah! If you're listening on Twitter Live, be a real one. Switch over to YouTube. Hit us with a thumbs up on your way in, and join the party because you can get in the comment section. We'll talk maybe about your comments. You can leave super chats, of course, and we'll definitely talk about them. But yeah, I wore my Lucky Nugget shirt today. 6-1, 6-1 all time in the playoffs when I wear this shirt. So where do
you go if they lose tonight?
I just give up.
Shirtless?
Just give up.
Just okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Down 3-0.
Yeah. It's over.
Yeah.
It was a good season, good run, fun times.
Hopefully in 24 hours we're not talking about that.
Yeah, exactly. So the one loss I have on this shirt is Suns Game 3 last year. And after that, it was just like, I'm not going to pull it out again.
Right. So this is the first time.
Yeah, but that's a similar after a couple of losses on the road and looking a little overmatched.
Yep.
That is a frighteningly similar situation to the one that stands there tonight. So
it is.
I get now. You know what? If I would have probably done the same thing. I literally keep track of Braves hats in terms of their record.
Yeah.
So I understand completely what you're doing here.
You guys are absolutely crazy.
Yes, we are.
I literally said on Twitter, I keep track of this stuff because I'm a dumb idiot.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say crazy, dumb idiot. That's kind of a different way of saying that.
Yeah, I want to feel like I have some control over something I have absolutely no control over.
At least you know. At least you know. Yeah, then it's respectable.
The numbers speak for themselves.
There you go. 7-1 coming up.
7-1. Gonna go to take it all the way to the finals with this shirt potentially.
Do you wash it in between?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
So you do not want not washing the shirt to be a part of the superstition.
No.
So you just
took care of that early.
Right. You just forestall that by washing it every time after every game, and then that's just your default.
What happened was I wore it game 5 of the Jazz series.
Yeah.
That was the first time I wore it. Nuggets obviously come back. I didn't wear it game 6, not because I just didn't know of its powers yet. Wore it game 7.
Boom, powers are back.
Powers are back.
You're thinking 2-0.
We go into the Clippers series. Down 3-1 again. Gotta go. Desperate times, desperate measures. Get it quick through the wash.
I gotta ask, how'd you not whip it out for the first 4 games of that series?
I don't think I fully understood. And I was thinking I'll pull it out if I need it. Game 5. Boom. Game 5. Hits again. Then I'm like, can't wear it game 6. That could be bad luck because I didn't wear it game 6 last series. Right. Game 7, wear it again. It works. And then I think I might be a little off on the record because I don't remember. I blacked out during that Lakers series. I don't remember if I wore it or not. But if I did, I probably would have worn it twice. So then it would probably be 7-2.
Yeah.
I honestly just don't remember.
That's still a great record for mostly postseason as well.
Right. Exactly.
That's another thing. The lucky shirt will sometimes have a loss.
Of course.
You don't
there's no such thing as a perfect shirt.
Right. You don't toss it out when there's a loss, but you come back to it pretty quickly.
So when do you toss it out though?
When do you
2 losses?
I don't own any shirts under 500.
Yeah.
You burn them?
If they start off on a loss, I probably won't wear them again.
Ever.
In the playoffs.
I think I'll give a Braves hat 10 shots. If a Braves hat was 0 for 10, it would be retired.
Burn it.
Yeah, but if it has like 10 losses and like 18 wins or something like that,
Yeah, that's fine.
That's okay. Or even like 500, I'm like, I can live with that. It's
Right,
It's
like-
the long. It's the extreme negative.
Right. My
where you have to say.
Jamal Murray jersey that matched like the same style as this
Yeah.
shirt. It has like a solid winning record. Not quite like this one, but I was like, oh, I'll bust it out game 2. Took the loss, but I was saving the powers for the dire
Do
stretch.
you adjust for quality of opponent?
Sometimes you want to get a shirt a win against a weak team.
I mean, so what you guys are saying now is next week the draft doesn't matter, training camp doesn't matter, regular season doesn't matter, as long as you guys pick out the right shirts and hats come middle of January. That's what's going to matter for these Denver Broncos.
Yeah, well, I spent so many years in the press box, I haven't really determined what my lucky Broncos lineup is.
True.
So it's going to be a lot of trial and error this year.
Yeah, there's been no playoffs since you've been covering the team,
Right.
where you've been able to work with this.
Was the bolo tie lucky or unlucky?
I mean, the Broncos lost like every game, so it's
Okay.
probably
Probably
unlucky.
unlucky.
That's a shame.
Yeah, it is
a real shame.
All right, let's get into our conversation here. And it's all about the dough. It's all about money. It's all about the guys who are going into this season looking to be unrestricted free agents next year. The guys who are on contract years. And while I said at the beginning it's a bit early for this conversation, it's never too early to re-sign a player that you want here long term and you are convinced that you're going to have here long term. And as we saw with Cortland Sutton and as we saw with Tim Patrick, the earlier you do it, the better price you get. So, Zach, do you want to go through the guys first, or do you just want to get us rolling on the list?
Yeah, let's go through these guys because there's really a couple of big names and then some lesser names. And the two biggest names, one we've talked about a lot, and if you want to hear that full detail, we talked about him last week a ton. Bradley Chubb, we've talked about how his number could be as high as $25 million, or after this year, he could be on a 1-year, $5 million prove-it deal. Another guy who could be on a monster deal after this year, Dre'Mont Jones. We've talked about him being involved in so many different trade packages for quarterbacks and things in the past because he's a damn good football player, because he's a young, valuable piece, and if he explodes this year, which we'll talk about in a second, he could be worth a ton. All 3 of your right tackles this year are on 1-year deals, and they'll all be unrestricted free agents. Billy Turner, Tom Compton, Calvin Anderson, Dalton Reisner, a starting offensive lineman, Malik Reed, Kareem Jackson, Mike Boone. So those are the names that we're talking about, but I think since we've talked about Bradley Chubb, I think the name that we need to talk about the most right now is Dre'Mont Jones, because we talked to him earlier this week, and I gotta say, man, Dre'Mont Jones is a really good player. He has a chance to become a almost borderline superstar from the defensive line.
Wow.
This year. The Broncos believe he can do that. He believes he can do that, and he says his goal this year for a second year in a row is 10 sacks. If you're getting 10 sacks from the interior defensive line, you are getting paid. You are viewed as a star in this league, and his price is going to skyrocket.
Yeah, and right now, the 5th highest paid interior defensive lineman in terms of per year value is Jonathan Allen of Washington, and he's at $18 million a year. Mm-hmm. And if Dre'Mont Jones has double-digit sacks, it's his turn to get paid.
Yep.
You probably can expect a contract of, at minimum, $17 million a year, probably higher than
We
that.
always say $1 million a sack until you get to double digits. Then it instantly goes to $2 million a sack.
But also, it's different on the interior than on the edge.
For sure.
I mean,
for
the interior pass rushers, if you're
It's
double
more
digit on the
valuable.
interior, well, it's more valuable and it's a rare skill set.
Right.
Yeah, it is. And Dre'Mont Jones is also good against the run, so it's not like he's just a one-trick pony and you're only going to pay him for one of those. And so people are saying, well, 10 sacks, that sounds like a ton come from the interior, and it is. But 2 years ago, his second year in the league, he had 6.5 sacks. Pretty darn good. Last year, he had 5.5 sacks, but what he did toward the end of the season was incredibly well. At the end of the season, from week 8 on, he had those 5.5 sacks.
Yeah.
So if he's able, and he was asked, well, what happened to allow you to click toward the end of the season? He said, my jumper just got hot. You know, it's just like in basketball. You just feel it. And I was just feeling it. If he does that, and let's say the first half of this season, he's looking at 5.5 sacks through the first 8 games of the season, oh boy.
You're in trouble.
You are in trouble because a discount even though he hasn't hit that 10 sacks yet, his agent's not going to be fooled and say, okay, yeah, we'll just count it as a 5.5 sack season. No. They're going to say, we're looking at 11, 12 sack season. You got to pay us now.
Yeah, so I honestly think the move is start these talks now.
I agree.
Yeah.
Especially if you believe in the kid. This is what I never understood about John Elway's approach. It's like, okay, you draft these guys, you want to keep them around, you're super high on them. Yeah. Why would you not sign them up early?
Yep.
Because they might get hurt. I'm not defending it. I'm saying that's part of the process.
And Mace, you're right on that, and especially not defending it, because I'm not going to defend that. But to me, that's just playing scared.
Yes.
I mean, regardless of whether you sign a guy up now or later, there's always a chance that he can get hurt.
Right. Any second. I mean, the Broncos signed Theo Riddick. He got hurt like 3 days into wearing his jersey, never played again.
Thank you, Kevin Hogan.
Yes.
For hanging him out to dry.
No, actually, thank you, Vic Fangio, for thinking Drew Lock needed to earn his position as the number 2 quarterback.
Right. Who was the linebacker, a former first-round pick that the Broncos signed maybe 2 training camps ago that literally got – he was
Mark Barron.
Mark Barron. He got hurt his first practice when he was with the Broncos, didn't play again for them for the rest of the year, still got paid.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot think about injuries, especially for guys who don't have an injury history. If guys have an injury history, I totally get it. And in my opinion, I would probably never commit to those guys long term. Yeah. You just keep doing 1 year deal. If you can keep them around. If they go, then they go. But for Dre'Mont, who's been largely healthy, he is not a guy where you're thinking, oh gosh, what's the next thing that's going to happen? I don't want to give him a contract. So sign him up now. Sign him up before the season, especially because of something we've talked about so much for pass rushers. The formula, baby.
Yeah.
You're going to be up early in games, and you're going to be able to let those guys pin their ears back. Go look through the league at all of the guys who lead the league in sacks. None of them are on bad teams because it's really hard to rush from behind when you don't know what the other team's going to do.
Okay. Yeah.
TJ Watt, though, at least they're
they're in games.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So let me. All right.
Team.
So let's go through some contracts here. If you do get him done early, what do you think you can get him at? Because right now, the top defensive interior lineman is Aaron Donald, $22.5 million.
League of his own.
Okay.
Yep.
Leonard Williams, 21. DeForest Buckner, 21.
Yeesh.
Chris Jones, 20. Jonathan Allen, 18. Vita Vea, 17.75. Kenny Clark of the Packers, 17.5. Grady Jarrett, 17. Cam Hayward, 16.4. And then tied for 10th, defensive interior lineman J.J. Watt and Fletcher Cox at $14 million a year. And think about it with Cox and Watt, those guys, they're 32 and 33. Yep. Cam Hayward is 33. If you're Dre'Mont Jones and George Paton comes to you and says, hey, let's talk contract now, what number do you have in your mind that you can get on the open market, and what are you willing to take to kind of give you, the assurance and security here? Because I don't think he would take a dime today below $14 million.
Okay, and that's actually the number I was looking at.
That's the exact number that I had in my head too.
But if he has a 10-sack season and you get him for $14 million a year, you get him done, we're talking about what a bargain the Broncos got.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And when I said he could become a superstar, I kind of meant that category right behind Aaron Donald. I don't think it's crazy to say that he could be viewed as a Chris Jones, as a Leonard Williams in terms of impact if he has 10 sacks this season. And so I think that's kind of where you're looking at if he does have 10 sacks. So you're right, Mace. You'd be getting a $6 million discount on him if you sign him up now to $14 million. But then let's say he comes out and he has 6 sacks. That's a good season, really good season from an interior defensive lineman. But is that worth $14 million? And then if he has that this year too, then he's really proved himself as a 6-sack kind of season guy because he had 5.5, 6.5, 6 this year. That's a lot of money to be paying for a really good player, but not a great player.
So could you go to him, though, right now and say, hey, obviously the contract negotiations aren't this simple, but it's, hey, $1 million a sack is the going rate. We'll give you $2 million per sack you had last season. Give you $12 million over 3 years, $36 million contract. What do you think?
$24 million guaranteed?
$24 million guaranteed.
That would be hard for Dre'Mont to, in my perspective, that'd be hard for Dre'Mont to pass up. Now, obviously, something that I'm not taking into account is these guys believe in themselves, and Dre'Mont Jones is a very confident guy. And one of the things he was asked, the very first question he was asked actually, was, how would you rate your performance last year? And he said, I'd say about a 7.5. I left a lot of money out there last year. So he's thinking about money. He's thinking about the millions that is going to be on the table. So I think it would be hard for him to pass up $24 million guaranteed. I don't think he would be afraid to pass that up.
And that's good, because remember now, the Broncos are in a Super Bowl window. So having a guy like that who's super motivated, thinking 10 sacks means $20 million, then it's going to be good for you this season. Now it's going to complicate things long term. Which is why I think, you would be you'd be willing to go to the table right now, in my opinion, and say, all right, we'll give you 12. And if he counters with 14, I think you take that deal.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. And everyone in the Broncos organization really, truly believes in Dre'Mont Jones. So I think they truly believe that 10-sack goal of his isn't crazy. So I think they would be viewing him as more of that player than more of the $6 million player. And so I think they would view that they'd be getting a deal as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting scenario because you're right. You feel like you're getting a deal until he has another 6-sack season. And you're like, okay, this is a 6-sack guy.
Although at the same time, you think of 6 sacks a year. That's kind of Derek Wolfe back in the day, right?
Yep.
And when the Broncos gave him a contract back in January of 2016, it was a 4-year deal. The average per year was 9.175. Of course, we've seen the salary cap go up, and the acceleration of that rise is going to hit another level here in 23 and 24. So if you kind of see where the cap is going, $14 million a year for 6-sack a year interior defensive lineman, well, effectively in terms of percentage of your cap, that's pretty close to what you were paying Derek Wolfe from 2016 to 2019.
It's a good point, Mace, but a big difference between that 2016, 2017, 2018 teams and now is no cost control quarterback. And you don't have that luxury to be spending money left and right on these other positions. And right now, where the Broncos are projecting for next year's cap, they only have $11 million in cap space. Now, they could free up some money by potentially getting a Russell Wilson deal done, bring his cap down. Right now, it's at $27 million. You could bring that down, but then you know what's going to skyrocket in the next coming years. You also could open up $10 million by moving on from Garrett Bowles, but then that creates a problem at left tackle. Graham Glasgow, you're going to open up $11 million if you move on from him. So there are going to be places to get money, but it's not like you're going to have $50 million to work with. You're going to have to pick and choose. And the Broncos are going to be at this point where if they want the $50 million quarterback, which is something we've wanted for so long, you're not going to be able to keep every single person. And Dre'Mont Jones, Bradley Chubb, let's say they both have great seasons. You're probably going to have to pick and choose.
More passing downs this
Yep,
year.
they're going to have their ears pinned
talk
back.
Quarterbacks have expensive pass rushers on their team. If you look through the NFL,
Yeah.
because those guys are pass rushing all the time.
Yep.
Yep.
Their quarterbacks
Because
are scoring.
Something we talk
Exactly.
about once a day.
Yeah.
So you think about cap savings, and maybe that's something you have to take with you as you go into the draft. And maybe, for example, at 64, you need to think long and hard if there's a corner there you like about going corner at 64 because you can cut Ronald Darby a year
Right.
from now and get $10 million
Yep.
of cap savings.
Yep. So right now, do you think the Broncos move on from Garrett Bowles
No.
after this year? I don't either, Mace.
I don't think so.
So let's say, do you think they move on from Graham Glasgow to save $11 million?
Yes.
Unless he takes a huge restructure, yes.
I would think so as well. And then Ronald Darby's the other one where you can get big money. Do you think they move on from him?
Nope.
I think it depends what they do in the draft.
Okay,
If they have somebody that they draft and they feel like he's ready to start in 23, play every down, then I think that is something they would take, or they would try to get a significant restructure in much the same way they got on Graham Glasgow this year. The other thing, of course, even though it's not a cap savings, you have to account for Bradley Chubb, but his contract doesn't factor in right now because it hasn't been accounted for. So that's another reason why you may have to think long and hard about if he has a big season, the old tag and trade.
Yeah, potentially. And so what we're talking about is potentially the Broncos are going to have between $20 and $30 million, depending on what they do with Ronald Darby, in cap space next year. And then, again, Russell Wilson could make that a little more, but then you're going to have to pay 1 to 2 pass rushers, potentially big-time money. Boom. There's all your money right there.
Yeah, it's gone.
And that's okay because the Broncos did lock up some key pieces. They don't have to pay Jerry Jeudy yet. They don't have to pay Pat Surtain yet. You already have Justin Simmons on a deal. But we're not going to be seeing the spending sprees. Free agency is going to be a lot less quiet, especially if you're signing your own guys before.
Yeah, but it is important to remember the cap is fake.
It is.
And it's also important to remember that you could have a $70 billion owner who can make the cap more fake than any other team in the league.
But if it comes down to it, you really might have to decide between Bradley Chubb and Dre'Mont Jones. If, let's say, they both have good seasons, $20 million for Dre'Mont Jones, $25 million for Bradley Chubb.
It's an easy answer to me who I would go with.
Dre'Mont?
The one that's been healthy.
Right. Yeah. And especially because you're not going to be getting a 1-year deal on Bradley Chubb for $25 million. If he has a huge season, it's going to be $125 million over 5 years.
Right. It's pretty crazy. I mean, and again, why not sign up Bradley Chubb right now? And the reason is because he hasn't been healthy.
Right.
But if you're afraid of him having a 15 sack season and what that's going to cost you, then you could probably get him, I would say, at a significant discount now.
I think so too.
Now, maybe he learns from the Shaq Barrett method, though. It's like, okay, well, if I have to, I'll just go take a 1-year, $5 million deal somewhere else next year. Then I'll have my big year. Then I'll secure the bag.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a lot more players do that these days. Be willing to say, like, I'll do a prove-it year. Mm-hmm. And for a guy like Shaq Barrett, it made a lot of sense because he hadn't really been given all those opportunities. And he thought, the more opportunities I get, the better I'm going to play.
And also, speaking of free agency and 1-year prove-it opportunities, the Broncos are finally now a place where they could benefit from that, where the Shaq Barretts of the world come to Denver to prove it because it's a Super Bowl team. And one place that you need to be tonight is the DNVR Bar if you're not going down to Ball Arena. And I could even make the argument that being here is better than even being at the game. It is that cool of an environment, especially for the playoffs, especially for this game. Ryan, you didn't shy away from it. This is a must-win game for the Nuggets tonight. It is massive, and it's a Thursday night. The bar is going to be popping.
Yeah, and you won't have to deal with Warriors fans here, which you will have to.
Yeah,
although there were some here last game. I have to get this approved. I want to put a sign on the door that says, "No, Warriors fans not welcome. We're actually serious."
Yeah, it was brutal.
Right, well, yeah. I mean, Saturday there was like one, and he was quiet.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't even notice.
Yeah. He like had a hoodie over his Warriors jersey, and he was respectful.
Yeah.
Then the other night there was like some mouthy ones where I was like, I think we're just gonna set a rule now. You just can't come.
There we go. It's gonna be all Nuggets fans here, and the vibes are going to be awesome. It's a late game starting at 8 p.m. So get down here early though, especially if you want to grab some food before the game.
Absolutely. And if you want to have a nice, calm experience, maybe it's here, maybe it's on your couch, hit up our friends over at Lightshade, where you can get 25% off with the code DNVR on each purchase. You can shop online, pick up what you want, then you just go into the store, give them the code DNVR, get your 25% off, and walk out with whatever you need. And they have the Wana Optimals Fast Asleep 20 to 100 THC to CBD gummies. These things are supposed to be a huge help with sleeping. So if if you're looking to catch some good shut eye, check out the Wana Optimals Fast Asleep 20 to 100 gummies over at Lightshade Dispensary and use that code DNVR to get 25% off your entire purchase.
And also, if you're at the bar, you got to have some Breckenridge brews with you because we got them all here. But let's say you're not able to make it to the DNVR bar tonight because you're out of state. Well, go to Breck Beer's Breck Locator to find out all the Breck beers and how close they are. They're all over the place, and you're going to have some Breck beer to celebrate a big win tonight. So check out Breck Beer's Locator to find all the Breck beer closest to you.
I was going to read that. I was going to do a couple of searches, show you how easy it is to find someplace. Although I did find one place in this country where it's hard to get Breck brews, but you have to go all the way to the northern coast of Alaska. But if you're in Fairbanks or Anchorage, you're golden.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Golden as in the color of beer.
Yes. Amber golden. But not so much on the North Shore of Alaska.
Should we do a random city again? Do you have the locator up?
I have the locator up, yes. So give me a random city, RK. Please.
Let's go with Sarasota, Florida.
Ooh. Sarasota, Florida. I'm going to be down in that neck of the woods in a couple of months. Let's see here. 125 results. Now, the cool thing about the Breck Beer Finder is that you can distill it down to products. So, for example, let's say you want a Strawberry Sky, right?
Yep.
Or maybe you don't, but I do.
I definitely do.
All right. Well, not every place has Strawberry Sky, but there are 12 places that do.
Near Sarasota, Florida.
Yes.
There you go.
So there you go. You're covered. I looked up Strawberry Sky for Tarpon Springs, Florida, where my parents are, which is about 50 miles or so north. And there wasn't a spot that was 2 miles away, but there was a spot within 10 miles. Perfect. It's an easy drive.
Tarpon there? Is that why it's called that?
Yeah. Although the funny thing is that the town was known for sponge diving, a sponge harvesting industry. They would go out in boats into the Gulf of Mexico, harvest the sponges, and come back.
Wow. Learn something new every day.
Interesting.
All right, let's move on here. Zach, who should we touch on next here?
Well, right tackle. That's a position that the Broncos just continue to pay in free agency, and they don't have all three of the tackles that are competing for the right tackle job this year are all free agents after.
You want to know why they keep paying in free agency?
Why?
Because they literally haven't even tried to draft someone at the position.
Which is crazy. Garrett Bowles is the last tackle they've drafted.
Yep.
It's wild. That's why I think it has to change this year.
I don't know. I was thinking this year, though, you should absolutely try to get a front seven player from Ohio State. That just keeps working out.
It does keep working out, speaking of Dre'Mont Jones.
Yep, exactly.
And so Calvin Anderson, Billy Turner, Tom Compton. Let's say Billy Turner, who seems to be the front runner for that job right now. Let's say he plays really well. Nathaniel Hackett loves him. Billy Turner loves being with the Broncos, loves playing with Nathaniel Hackett. And let's say he turns out to be an average right tackle. $10 million right there. $8 million right there.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money when we're talking about how the Broncos right now only have $11 million in cap space, not accounting for Dre'Mont or Bradley Chubb. And then you also have Dalton Reisner, another potential starter who has shown potential to be really good in this league. And now he's back in that same system where he had the most success of his career so far.
Yeah. The 1 year deal for Billy Turner never really made that much sense to me. Just because it shows that you're not all that confident in him.
Right.
But why?
He's 32 years old.
That's pretty old.
Don't offensive linemen, though, they can play easily until they're 35.
Yeah.
Depends on their injury history. Turner doesn't have much of an injury history.
Right.
I mean, how old was Bobby Massey last year? About the same age, right?
30.
If not older.
Yeah, DeMar Dotson was a bit
34.
older. Now, DeMar Dotson, he didn't have so much an injury history as just his body was breaking down.
Yeah.
Like, he had, he basically, there was a reason why he could pass pro, but he couldn't run block.
He was tall.
He was very tall.
Thanks there, Vance.
Yeah. I just thought 2 year deal, maybe 3 year deal.
Yeah.
So, like, give yourself some sort of stability at the
I
position.
agree. At only $5 million with incentives.
To me, it told me they are not even convinced he's going to win the starting job.
Yep.
And that's really interesting because it says, like, maybe Nathaniel Hackett doesn't actually love him.
Right.
He just thought, like, well, if he's available, he's out there. Bring him in on a 1 year deal,
Yeah. It shows that he likes him as a person, maybe not as much as a right tackle.
And just like, I don't not like him,
Right.
But I'm not saying he's our long-term solution there. And I think there's still internal belief that Calvin Anderson could actually be a real long-term solution. It's a glimmer of hope that they're hanging on to whereas they're saying we're not even going to guarantee anyone the starting job with the money that we're giving them because we still think Calvin could pop at any moment.
I think the Broncos are in a tough situation here. I don't think Tom Compton, to be fair, is going to emerge as like a pretty good starter and then get a big contract. But let's say Billy Turner or Calvin Anderson do become that average guy. You're paying them. And you're going to be paying them a decent amount, especially for having Garrett Bowles on the other side for 18 to 20 mil.
Yeah, or you just go back to the open market again.
Oh, boy. And that, again, just why it makes so much sense to draft someone. But then let's say Dalton Reisner pops again, and he has a good season, and it would be a perfect time for him on a contract year.
Then more money to the offensive line. But, I mean, it's weird because if you're paying good offensive linemen, even, obviously you want to pay great offensive linemen. But if you're paying 4 good offensive linemen, and then you have a rookie. Like, you're not complaining about it.
No, not at all. And also, I would rather invest in the offensive line than the defensive line because you got to protect Russell Wilson.
Absolutely, something that the Seahawks largely failed to do. And, again, we can go over Russ was credited with the most sacks or whatever. It's not all on the offensive line. But, like, they're starting, like, George Fant and, like, just scrubs around him all the time.
Yep, I was pretty much starting right tackle.
Yeah, I'm Jermaine Ifedi.
Yep.
I'm just remembering watching these Seahawks games because I obviously bet on Russell Wilson pretty much every week. And just being like, who are these guys? Every week is just another guy, subpar player trying to protect Russell
I
Wilson.
mean, Fetty
year
was a
in and year
first-round
out.
pick back in the day.
I know, but he was bad.
He became bad, but
Yes.
but at the same, they kept throwing him out there in much the same way for a while. The Broncos kept throwing Garrett Bowles out there.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it was 2.5 years before he was a decent player at left tackle.
Yep.
2017, 2018, I mean, there was a reason why he was Garrett Holds, and he was getting beat. But first-round pick, as they said in Top Gun when Maverick was in his head after Goose's death, keep sending him up. If you have first-round pick, with the exception of Paxton Lynch, who was just awful, but in general, if they're starting, you keep sending him up. And that was a Fetty in Seattle.
Still think now, aside from Russell Wilson, because we're fine now, the Broncos would have been better off playing Paxton Lynch every game of his rookie year.
It was, and I typically would agree with you, but this one I have to disagree. Oh, because of the losing.
You would have lost more.
Right,
you would have
right.
been out after year one, and then you could have been in on the Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes.
But that's not how
Yeah.
Gary was going to view it.
Yep.
It's not
I mean-
Gary, because and also it would not have lasted that long because of what Paxton proved to be, and certainly he did well when there was the element of surprise against Tampa Bay. They had not. There was no film on him. Atlanta had 2.5 quarters of film, and that was enough to start deconstructing Paxton Lynch. Jacksonville had a little over a game and a half of film, and Lynch was just useless in that game. If they had started Paxton Lynch all 16 games, you would have had a locker room mutiny on your hands.
And that was the biggest problem, is they thought they could win the Super Bowl that year.
Right.
They really thought that.
They
did.
thought with average quarterbacking they could do it. And you know what? That's where, in retrospect, they should have swallowed hard. John Elway should have said, when Colin Kaepernick said, I don't want to take a pay cut, he should have swallowed hard and said, fine. And bring him in.
I completely agree. No, I'll always agree with that.
Would have worked out differently for everybody.
Back
Yeah.
to undrafted guys.
Yes.
Or not undrafted guys. I'm sorry. I was
Unrestricted,
thinking of the next guy who is undrafted, Malik Reed. Man, it really seems like he is set for hopefully a Shaq Barrett type of situation. It does not seem like the Broncos are going to pay him, want to pay him, or are going to have the means to pay him, honestly.
He's too small.
He's not strong enough at the point of attack
Yeah.
like Shaq. That's the big difference between the two.
I think he's undervalued. Still, I agree with you. I don't think he's going to be an every single down type of player that gets $18 million like Shaq, but I do think he has a place in this league, and I do think he's going to have an even better opportunity somewhere outside of Denver, and he's going to get paid more too. Maybe it's not $18 million, maybe it's $5-6 million from somewhere, but I think it's going to be somewhere else.
Yeah, he's a fringe starter rotational guy, and there are some teams in the league that will look at him and say, yeah, we start him for a year or two until we kind of find somebody else. The thing is, you can probably get equivalent production out of Jonathan Cooper.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
I
think you get better production.
you have him sitting in the wings as well. The presence of Cooper is probably why Malik Reed isn't even 100% to be on the 53 when the season starts.
Well, and Jonathan Cooper, I think, could be the reason why Bradley Chubb isn't back.
That would be kind of learning from what you had with Shaq Barrett. It would be the opposite. Instead of paying Von Miller to stay here, it would be you would just be promoting the guy from within.
Right, and the reason I believe that is because Dre'Mont Jones doesn't have someone waiting in the wings behind him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There isn't the next big thing behind Dre'Mont Jones. So you keep Dre'Mont Jones. Jonathan Cooper, I mean, it's easy to forget. In bursts, he was incredible last year.
I'll tell you what, there's someone with much more football knowledge than myself and very smart, has seen a lot over the years, that looks at Cooper and Chubb and thinks that Cooper will have the better career.
And that's kind of what we were talking yesterday.
I'm just saying that opinion is out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And again, I think the Broncos could do some projecting on Jonathan Cooper while also just being weary of Chubb's injury history and just saying, like, we know we have to kind of pick between one of these two, and Chubb and Dre'Mont. Let's pick the one that has been a little bit more healthy and consistent, and let's roll the dice on Jonathan Cooper, who, he doesn't have like a Malik Reed issue where I have a hard time imagining Malik Reed ever being good against the run.
Right.
He just gets tossed around.
I mean, he's small.
Right. He is legitimately small. It's why he was undrafted.
Yeah.
Whereas Jonathan Cooper is a built dude. Like, he can figure it out against the run.
And he only dropped because of the heart condition.
Yep.
If he has a clean bill of health, you're talking about him being a 3rd or 4th round pick.
Maybe even higher.
Also, there's
probably not. I think probably his third is as high as he would go. But still, a 3rd rounder, you expect that guy to become a starter for you, ideally.
Yep.
Also, there's a chance that the Broncos go with 64 and go edge rusher. And if that's the case, you're not going to have those guys plus Jonathan Cooper, plus Bradley Chubb, plus Randy Gregory. That would be a clear sign as to who's moving on next year, and it's not going to be Randy Gregory. It'd be Bradley Chubb.
I'll tell you what, if Ojabo drops, I mean, at what point do you start picking up the phone to maybe even move up, even though this might be a redshirt year? That might be your answer. Because you're not getting an edge rusher of Ojabo's quality with a draft pick unless you trade up even 2 years from now.
Would you give up 64 and your first 3rd round pick to go up to, let's say, 50 to get him?
You could package, according to the draft value chart, you could go all the way up to 41, 42.
I think 40 is where maybe you start working the phone, actually,
I would
for that kind of deal.
100% do it.
I would as well. I would too. Now, would George do it? Because it's kind of the opposite.
I don't know. I mean, it's not giving up too much. Like, you're still going to have a 3rd round pick. Now you have a high second, so you got a 2nd and a 3rd round pick. It's not like you're punting away the entire first 2 days of the
I think
draft.
you start dealing down from those 4th round picks, 115, 116 back to back, and you start maybe trying to turn one of those into, you maybe turn each of them into a 5th and a 7th round pick.
I do it in a heartbeat, and the reason is because then you didn't give up a 1st round pick in order to get Russell Wilson. You still got a top 10 talent, potentially a top 15 talent. So I certainly do it.
Yeah, and again, Achilles injuries have become much more recoverable over the last couple of years.
Instantly.
Yeah,
too.
I mean, you saw Cam Akers. What he did was shocking, honestly, based on what we used to think about that injury. But I'm in on that because, again, you still drafted in the 2nd round. You're still going to draft in the 3rd round, and maybe if you're lucky, you can give up less than that. If you can give up 2nd and your first 3rd to get up to 41, what if you can give up 2nd and your first 4th to get up to 50 if he's still there?
Yeah, definitely. You absolutely pick up the phone at least. And one thing that I like is George Paton is a guy that is going to be open to doing those.
And it's perfect for the way that your roster is currently constructed. You have 2+ pass rushers this year. You know that you're going to probably be down 1 next year, and you have a top 10 talent waiting in the wings who you put no pressure on this year to do anything. You just say, hey, look, 100% redshirt year, just get healthy. We'll see you next year. Kind of like what the Nuggets did with Michael Porter Jr. back in the day, although obviously his injury history was more well documented than this just one-off thing.
That's the risk you take. Because there's a valid question on MPJ, did you give him the contract too soon? And remember, with Chris Harris Jr., the Broncos, that was a case of re-signing and taking advantage of the injury history. Because they got him done in December of 2014 before he hit the market.
In
at a below market value deal.
In defense of the Nuggets, they were patient with MPJ. They brought him back. He was completely fine since he started playing. And then the second you give him the contract, it pops back up.
It's
just bad luck.
Let's say the Broncos don't trade up, though. And let's dive into our player profile series about who could be there at 64. And Ryan, you talked about how there's no big guy waiting in the wings right now. Well, what if there is a big guy that the Broncos draft this year? Defensive lineman Travis Jones out of Connecticut, and he's a big boy. 6'4", 325 pounds. According to our draft guys, his strengths are at the Senior Bowl and Combine. He stood out. He has a fantastic athletic profile, well-developed hands to contribute as an inside pass rusher. His weaknesses is his value may be limited as a one-tech or nose tackle, an average college production. And guys, this is a guy who has really flown up the boards in the offseason since the season ended because he did really dominate at the Senior Bowl, especially one-on-ones with offensive linemen. He just plows through them when you watch back and look at Senior Bowl tape. So this is a guy that would provide a huge presence on the inside, not necessarily a Dre'Mont Jones replacement because Jones is an end, but the Broncos need someone at the middle. They have Mike Purcell this year. They could easily move on from him after this year, but speaking of guys you can't count on, I'm not counting on Mike Purcell this year because right after he signed his contract, past 2 years he's been very injured. Man, you get a guy like Travis Jones on the inside, your defensive line went from, okay, you have a good piece there, what else is there, to you're set.
I'll tell you what, one thing that you like about Travis Jones is he does rise to the occasion because you mentioned the Senior Bowl. I thought his best game last year was against Clemson as well. And, for a UConn program that is really in kind of full retreat in a lot of ways, you want a guy at that level to be the classic example of somebody that if you don't know their number, you don't know their name, and you watch the film and say, oh, well, this guy's making plays. That's Travis Jones.
Right.
Like, you don't... and then he's easily identifiable as someone who is at a high level. And when you see that from an interior defensive lineman, it really jumps out even further because sometimes it can be a little bit more difficult to distinguish yourself. I mean, the only thing that you're kind of concerned about is sort of the positional value for the draft here. I mean, because let's say he ends up settling as a nose tackle, which is probably his likely fit in this scheme. How often is that nose going to play? Is he going to be more than a 40 to 42% guy in terms of snaps? And is that worth spending pick 64 on? So it's not a question of talent and ability with Travis Jones. I think it's a question of positional value at that first pick that you have, 64.
But he's a little bit of a tweener in terms of his weight.
He's not 350.
Right. To where you could maybe say, okay, well, we can use him, in multiple different ways.
Well, 350 guys are still pretty unusual at nose tackle. I mean, there are not a lot of Vita Veas walking through that door.
So then my question is, though, if they do go this route, is he the Dre'Mont Jones replacement? Because you also have DJ Jones, who's there, and are you really going to draft a guy in the second round with your first pick in the draft who's going to be on the bench when you go to dime and nickel because you're going to have DJ Jones and Dre'Mont Jones? I mean, who are you taking off unless you're just viewing Travis Jones. Boy, Jones. Holy cow. Okay, this needs to happen. This needs to happen now. But seriously, who are you taking off the field? Is it going to be actually Dre'Mont Jones because he's not part of your future?
I don't know, but no matter who it is, I'm calling them the law firm even if it's the law firm of Jones and Purcell.
By the way,
I like it.
You want to know the relative athletic score on Travis Jones?
Hit me with it.
It is 9.4.
Yeah. About six notches too low for me.
He's 325 pounds like we talked about. He ran a 4.940.
That's crazy.
And
Big dude.
Yeah, and a 7.33 second three cone, which is absurdly high for a 325, or absurdly low time for a 325 pounder.
Kind of goes to the idea that if you could play him, second and 4, you could potentially play him at end.
Yeah, you could. But again, who are you taking off the field?
I don't know.
And that's, I think, where this position just becomes a little bit too much of a luxury with where you are right now. A defensive lineman with your second round pick, which is your first overall pick, unless he's really your BPA there and kind of blows everyone out of the water, I don't think you end up going this route.
Yeah, I'm jonesing for 3 Jones on the line.
I see what you did there.
That would be awesome.
It really would be awesome. And one thing that does concern me is he has kind of flown up draft boards in the offseason. And those type of players always give me a little bit of hesitation.
We did have Shelby Harris, Devontae Harris, and Chris Harris on the same defense at one point.
Yeah, and Devontae Harris wasn't the biggest name out there.
I mean, should we have Eric working on the Keeping Up with the Joneses t-shirt?
Potentially, although that's probably trademarked.
You should probably.
I don't know. It's something when something is such a cliche like that, isn't it kind of in the public domain? The phrase "keeping up with the Joneses."
You would think.
Man, there's got to be something too with the 3 Joneses weighing about 1,000 pounds roughly.
Yeah.
half
There's also
ton of
a distillery here in town called the Family Jones.
Oh, well, and then we'd have the barbecue sauce too.
Yep.
The DNVR Bar times the Joneses.
It could be amazing. Could pop off.
I mean, shouldn't we? It'd be cool to like get DJ Jones's barbecue sauce, family barbecue sauce here, and have
Heck
a,
yes.
and
We're
have a
working on it.
sandwich at the bar.
Yeah.
I mean I sent out a tweet the day he signed.
Yeah.
But I think we're making inroads
There
there.
we go. There we go. I love it. I love it.
Anyone else we need to touch on?
That's it.
All right, awesome. Obviously, it's been a huge problem. You know, when people complain about how many Warriors fans are going to be in the stadium tonight, I have 2 opinions.
Yeah.
One, you don't get to complain unless you bought a ticket,
Fair.
right? Because if you didn't and you live here, then you're part of the problem.
So everyone at the DNVR Bar tonight's part of the problem.
They shouldn't complain about it. That's
Right,
all I'm
fair,
saying. That's
fair.
all I'm saying. You shouldn't complain about how many Warriors fans are there because you could have taken a seat from one of them.
Yep, it's true.
2 is the problem is not that. The problem is the TV deal.
Yep.
The problem is that most people can't watch these teams on TV, and we have a solution for that. It's Evoca TV, which is an awesome product that will allow you to watch your hometown teams, the Avs, the Nuggets, and the Rockies. It's a great deal for a great price, $25 a month. $10 a month for the receiver, which is a great deal. And when you use the code DNVR, you're going to get $10 off your first 3 months. We're talking about $25 a month to be able to watch your teams.
So worth it.
If you guys are anything like me, that's the only thing I watch on TV anyway. So check out Evoca. Go to evocatv.com to check it out and use the code DNVR to get $10 off your first 3 months from Evoca.
And you've got to check out our friends over at Green Mountain Dental to get your teeth cleaned. Look, you're going to go and get your teeth cleaned anyways. You might as well go somewhere that's going to treat you fantastic, that's part of our family, and they'll give you a free Sonicare toothbrush when you schedule a cleaning, x-ray, and exam. So you're going to go to the dentist anyways. Might as well go somewhere that's going to give you a free Sonicare toothbrush. And you can talk Denver sports with them because they're die-hard Colorado sports fans. So check them out. They're only a 15-minute drive from downtown Denver. And on top of that, they're part of our family. Supporting our partners is supporting us. So we'd really appreciate it as well. Check them out. Green Mountain Dental. Schedule that cleaning, x-ray, and exam for a free Sonicare toothbrush.
All right. Shall we move on into the comment section?
Absolutely.
All right, do we have any super chats? No super chats. Let's jump right into the comments from the subscribers of thednvr.com.
And the first comment coming in on our website is coming in from, it's popping up right now, it's coming in from Talking Schmidt. Says, what's up, guys? Thanks for answering yesterday. I heard some Troy Anderson talk, and I currently go to Montana, so it's a huge rivalry for us talking about Montana State, but the guy is a stud. 3-time state A champ in Dillon, Montana, and was in every position on the field. He's a huge name here in Montana, and even though we have the rivalry, I would love to see him become a Bronco. My question is there any chance Paton trades up in the draft, and if so, for who? Thanks, guys. Go Broncos.
Yeah, we just discussed that a little bit. I think there are a couple guys that could be that. Unfortunately, as much as I like Anderson, I don't think he would be one.
I agree, and he could be a guy there at 64 potentially. And one of the things about Anderson, I mean, you mentioned how he played all over the field in high school. He did it in college. He was a quarterback 2 different times in college, which is just insane.
And a running back.
Yes, which is insane to be talking about. This guy is an athletic freak. Didn't he get a 10 on the
his RAS?
Yes, his RAS.
All freshman team as a running back.
Insane.
All conference as a quarterback, then all conference as a linebacker, then all American as a linebacker.
Insane. That's hard to like you see the best athletes in high school do that. You never see that in college.
Yeah, I mean the last one I can remember who would be like similar is Miles Jack, who was a running back and a linebacker.
You're saying he was a jack of all trades?
He was a jack of all trades.
Sorry.
There was also
Man, we're jonesing for that in Denver.
there was a guy at Washington, because Miles Jack was UCLA. There was a guy at Washington who did a similar thing and now balls out in the NFL, but I'm blanking on who it was. Could it have been Buda Baker? I don't know.
Maybe.
But it's rare. It's definitely rare to see guys and to do it at such a high level. Basically, put him anywhere on the field. He's all conference or all American. And obviously, my favorite thing about him is the fact that he sees the game like a quarterback.
Yeah.
I think it's such a valuable thing. We always talk about how quarterback's the hardest position in sports. It's the most is required of you, in my opinion, compared to anything else, especially in the NFL, where instead of in college where you're turning and saying everyone learns their job from the play call, whereas in the NFL the quarterback has to tell everyone their job in the play call.
Right.
So I don't know how they were doing it at Montana State, but either way, you see the field through a quarterback's eyes, you're just seeing things differently.
Yeah. By the way, Buck Baker was a high school running back.
Okay.
Is that what you're? So you're
No.
thinking of somebody who was like in college?
Someone who played for Washington in college played both ways.
Probably not Vita Vea.
No, it was not.
Yeah, I don't think he was running back.
Gosh.
It'd be tough to tackle.
The Spencer Larson All Stars.
It'll come to me.
Well, next one coming in from Mark IT Snatch says, "Hey guys, are there any other free agents still available that you'd like to see with Denver before the draft? CRK, I can ask things that are actually related to the Broncos." And then he has a non-Broncos question. And to round out the NFC West, what Seattle Seahawk has been scorned by Canton? I know who you're going to say.
Russell Wilson.
Yes, exactly.
Well, he's not eligible.
Still scorned.
The guy who's been scorned is Sean Alexander, because here's a running back who, in the Super Bowl era, he is the only running back with at least 6,000 rushing yards and a league MVP trophy who's not in the Hall of Fame.
Was it because his career was short?
Relatively short.
So kind of like Terrell Davis.
Yeah, but
when he was playing, he was absolutely a Hall of
he
Famer.
made it 10 years,
Right.
Sean
Oh,
Alexander,
okay.
and had about 9,400 rushing yards. But it's one of those things where we kind of have to adjust our standards a little bit to account for the fact that running backs have a shorter shelf life now. That unless you're Frank Gore, you're not accumulating stats because teams don't want to pay running backs. They'd rather go young at running back here in the 21st century. So I think Alexander does get in at some point. But even then, it's kind of a stretch of a snub compared to some others around the league. Seattle, I think, is pretty good in terms of who they've got. The biggest snub for a long time was Kenny Easley, but they got him in the seniors committee back 5 years ago.
Man, I got to say, though, in a 5-year stretch, he averaged 1,500 rushing yards and 17 touchdowns. To me, that's a Hall of Famer.
I knew you were going
to
to bring something good for your Alabama guy. Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
that's a Hall of Famer.
I figured out who it was. Shaq Thompson.
Oh,
Shaq Thompson
yes.
out of UW.
Yeah.
As a senior, ran for... where'd it go? Ran for 456 yards and 2 touchdowns as a running back. He also that season played in the slot. He also played safety and played linebacker.
It's pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Pretty
Versatile.
Yes.
That's for sure. And then who are other free agents you'd like to see Denver sign before the draft?
I mean, I just want to see him bring Melvin Gordon back out. I'll sleep a little better.
Melvin Gordon's still out there on the street. huh?
Yeah.
I mean, now he has to be waiting until after the draft to
Right.
try to help his value. By the team that doesn't get a running back that they want, then it boosts his value. His value has to be as low right now as it can be. I only see it increasing, even if it's a little bit after the draft.
And I wonder if, because there's the thing connecting him to Baltimore earlier this month. I wonder if it's just, I really want to be in Denver. I'm going to give them every shot here.
Then
He's made it clear he wants to be a Bronco.
absolutely. And then what that means, though, is you better be ready to take a big discount now.
This just reminded me, were you surprised by our poll results yesterday?
Yes. Also, that poll popped off.
Yeah, it definitely created some conversation. Someone on Instagram said we were participating in 420 by posting that poll. I am shocked. 80-20-ish
Yep.
is what it came out to. People would not trade Cortland Sutton, Dre'Mont Jones, and a third for Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, and I think some part of that is having loyalty, fans having loyalty to, we love Cortland Sutton, we love Dre'Mont Jones, we love our guys. I think we talked about this yesterday, how Deebo Samuel is underrated still. Even though how good he is, he's still underrated. A 1,400-yard receiver. I thought he was truly just bringing value as not truly just bringing value. I thought so much of his value was being that running back and wide receiver. Just as a receiver, 14 yards. That's 1,400 yards. That's insane.
Yeah, though it did come out yesterday that part of the reason why he wants to be traded is he doesn't want to be used as a running back anymore, which definitely hurts his trade value.
Yeah, but he's still a 1,400-yard receiver.
But he's still a 1,400-yard receiver, which is way up there.
Yeah.
And he is just a dog. He's just a dog. So I'm not. I think another part is no one thinks it's going to happen.
And
so
that's
it's
also,
easy to
yeah.
vote no, and you don't think he's because I guarantee you, if the trade was made, everyone would say this is a great trade for the Broncos.
Right. They'd be talking about another superstar added to the team.
I was glad to see the public had such prudence on this issue.
All right.
I don't believe in the wisdom of crowds, but in this case, I do.
When it backs you up is when you believe in the
Pretty
wisdom
much,
of crowds.
yes.
From Howler Bro Surf. Hi, fellas. Who are some of the Broncos you saw consistently have good training camps preseason that never fully clicked on the field? Anyone you really rooted for and wanted to succeed? For me, the go-to is Jordan Taylor. Haven't heard anything about him in a while.
Sunshine.
Yeah, Sunshine did have some good moments in training camp.
They're often wide receivers over the years.
I was going to say, the one for me is Cody Latimer.
Ah, yes.
He always looked like a beast in training camp.
Especially his first training camp. He was owning Bradley Roby.
Yep.
This is going back a minute. It's actually going back 20 years, but I have fond memories of Frank Rice, the former Colorado State receiver, just absolutely balling out in camp. And then more recently at running back, this was a decade ago, I remember Xavier Oman.
Yes.
Absolute preseason stud.
I got one.
Hey.
D'Angelo Henderson.
Ah, yes, big time. And I'll go running back as well. Mike Boone. Last year, he looked so good. Now, I'm not writing him off, but at least last year, he was a beast in training camp and did nothing.
But you always write him off because you're always saying, like, you got to bring back Melvin. You can't go into the season with just Boone.
I think that's how the Broncos view it. I don't think the Broncos view Mike Boone as that. I don't know why he didn't get any time. I mean, did he have one touch last year?
Yeah, he did. I think he actually got a jet sweep.
We know how those work out.
And I think he got a couple carries as well. Decent, nothing special.
I think literally like 3 or 4 carries.
Do you remember Mace?
God, I don't remember off the top of my head.
It was very limited. Yeah. Obviously, he was injured most of the season.
He had 4 carries.
I'm fully of the belief that he can be. I'll be completely content with him as the backup running back.
4 carries for 35 yards, 8.8 yards per carry.
There we go. That's my guy.
He has 84 career touches in 48 games played over 4 years.
What's his average per touch?
Let's see. His average per rush is 5.5. His average per reception is 5.6.
Give that man the rock.
He was playing like that last training camp, and they never touched it. They never gave it to him.
Well, because he was hurt.
He was only hurt for the first 5 games of the season.
Is that true? Wow.
Yeah, I think. Do you have the stats?
He missed, let's see here. I have the game log here. He missed the first 5 games, and then he was inactive at Cleveland, inactive against Philadelphia, DNP versus Detroit and the Bengals.
And again, that could be all on the former coaching staff not knowing what they're doing. But one thing, especially I've been in this job longer, I've realized if a player isn't seeing the field, it's not because an entire coaching staff is completely inept. It's because there's something else going on.
I just think that they decided it's not like some other running back was getting the 3rd carries. I just think they decided Melvin and Javonte is our running back rotation. And I always felt like when they signed Mike Boone last year, he was being signed as the heir apparent to Melvin Gordon once he walked.
See, that's what I thought too, but then why didn't Mike Boone take some of that load off when Javonte was out for a week or when Melvin was out for a week?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's weird.
From Vash the Man. My boys, what is up? Just wanted to ask, now that Russ is our quarterback, will Tim Patrick be able to rise to an elite wideout, or at least in my eyes, get the recognition as an elite wideout? Will he forever just be looked at as a really good wide receiver? Or maybe I just have a man crush on him. Peace, love, and chicken grease. I'm out. I honestly don't think he's viewed as a really good wide receiver yet.
Right.
So I think he can be elevated from good wide receiver to really good or great wide receiver. He will not, I don't think, ever be considered an elite wide receiver.
I completely agree with that. He's if everything goes right with Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, he's going to be the 3rd wide receiver. And in order to be viewed as an elite wide receiver, you got to have the stats.
To be number 1.
Right. And when you are the 3rd guy, or even splitting, it's going to be hard. I shouldn't say it's going to be hard, but these guys are all going to have to ball out. I don't see one of these guys having 1,800 yards and the other two having 700. It's going to be more even.
Yep. Broncos Only says, I can't say I'm listening from Dover, but I drove through there once, and man, it's in the middle of Della nowhere.
Yeah, so he's on Ryan's side there. Love hearing from you.
It's not even a real place.
Illinois Bronco, I think, rounding us out here, says, what's up, guys? First things first, I couldn't stand seeing all the hate thrown Mace's way on social media. If Mace left DNVR, it would hurt worse than us trading Vaughn, and I shed grown man tears when we traded Vaughn. Also, I love hearing the stories of how others found out about the news that we traded for Russ. The way I found out couldn't have been any more perfect. I was monitoring the Rodgers news all day and bummed when I saw he was staying with the Packers. I decided grading papers was the best way to get my mind off our QB situation. As I was grading, I heard a loud thump, 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 thump from a student running down the hallway, followed by Sisler, my last name. Check your phone. I looked up to see Chisler. I looked up to see one of my students sprinting into the gym. You guys just traded for Russ. I quickly grabbed my phone to confirm the news. I was over the moon and proceeded to stand up and yell, "Let's go!" at the top of my lungs. Students stared, but I was so excited I didn't care. Definitely a day I will never forget.
I love the rhyme. Students stared, but I was too excited to care.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if someone yelled to me, you guys just traded for Russ, I would think the Nuggets traded for Russell Westbrook.
Oh, that'd get me yelling. They get a lot of people yelling in Denver, that's for sure.
Like, no!
Right. They'd be yelling, though.
Although I guess it was past the NBA trade deadline at that point.
Mm-hmm.
To me, like, I was so just bummed by the idea of Aaron Rodgers. And little did I know better news was coming.
Yep, and how crazy of a 2 hours it was.
It's just so funny to look back, like, weeks before we had done draft any available quarterback. All three of us put Russ Wilson as our number one, but if you go listen to the conversation, we're like, it just doesn't seem realistic, but if you could have anyone...
You know why we said it was so unrealistic is because it was so incredibly stupid for Seattle to trade him.
It was.
And they're going to just continue to look stupid for eternity.
That's still the thing that I can't get past here is the most precious commodity in today's NFL and the most necessary commodity is a great quarterback who clearly has several years left in him based on how other quarterbacks have aged into their late 30s. Why you wouldn't just drop everything to build around him, around the hardest thing to get. You think it's hard, it's hard. Is it hard to get a lockdown corner, as George Paton said? Yeah, it is. It's harder to get.
You got
that
one
QB.
at 9.
Yeah, but it's harder to get the elite quarterback.
It's egos, Mace. The Seattle general manager, head coach Pete Carroll thought we're more important than this quarterback, and so we're going to do it our way. And the way they probably viewed it is, look, when we won a Super Bowl, it wasn't because of Russ. It was that ground game we had. It was the defense we had. And they are just going to be sorely, sorely mistaken, and they're going to be kicking themselves. In fact, these guys are going to be fired or forced to retire in the next couple of years because they made that decision.
But even then, he was a legit top 10 quarterback, probably top
100%.
top 6 or 7.
That's not how they're viewing it.
I know that's not how exactly.
Pete Carroll's taking the credit for it and saying it wasn't because of him.
I mean, it was manna from heaven that they built this great defense, and then an outstanding quarterback dropped to them because he was 5'11".
I want to see what the win total are set at for the Seattle Seahawks this year.
Pretty darn low.
It's got to be low.
Lowest in the AFC or NFC West, pardon me.
Where are they? Seattle Seahawks. Let me get a guess from you guys.
I'll go 6.5. I'll go 5.5 actually.
All right, I'll go 6.5.
Split them. It's exactly at 6.
It's exactly.
What would you have guessed?
Just
say you would have guessed 6 so you can be right.
No, I think I would have actually said I was wishful thinking that it would be too high so I could bet the under, so I think I would have said 7.
Okay.
There we go. And the Seahawks, and what they're doing is they are building up Drew Lock. We'll see what they do in a week from now, but they're tweeting out, Drew Lock throwing little slants and off-season workouts.
Yeah.
What's weird is that Drew Lock in Seahawks gear doesn't look weird at all to me, but Noah Fant in Seahawks gear looks pretty weird to me.
Why is that?
I have no idea. Just like a mental thing. Like when I see Drew Lock in Seahawks stuff, I'm like, yeah, that looks right.
Maybe.
You have no idea?
All right. Oh.
No idea.
Here's my theory on it. You can feel free to say that's complete bull. Noah Fant came from Iowa. They had a real traditional uniform there. And if you're picturing him in something other than a Bronco gear, you kind of go back to college. Mizzou has had some pretty funky looks over the years. And it's like that vibe sort of is kind of Seattle. It's a cool uniform, but it's a very unique uniform.
It's possible. I think the main thing is we just haven't talked about it all that much. Like, we talk about the trade, and then we just say, oh, they're gone, see ya. But obviously the Drew Lock, when you talk about the trade, it's like, well, the Broncos now have Russell Wilson as their quarterback, and the Seahawks now have Drew Lock as their quarterback. So it's like very one-to-one type of thought. Whereas when you see Noah Fant, you're like, oh, yeah, they traded Noah Fant too.
Right. You know how we always said when the Broncos make a big trade for a quarterback, it doesn't really matter who they give up. Even if it was a Javonte Williams or a Pat Surtain, people don't like thinking about that. But when the trade happens, fans are just going to forget about those pieces that are thrown in. What's crazy is inside the locker room, it's exactly what happened. Dre'Mont Jones was talking about it, and when you found out that Shelby Harris was traded, how bummed were you? Because you guys were in the same room, good friends, and he's like, it's part of the business, and I wish Shelby well, but when we play the Seahawks, I'm ready to whoop his tail, and it's like, that was like one of his best friends on the team, and just that shows you how valuable the quarterback is. Even when your good pal is traded, it's like, well, okay, bye. I'm gonna start winning.
That's a man who thinks better me than him on the lifeboat.
Yeah,
100%.
Exactly.
It's self-preservation right there.
And that's how he should think.
Now, one other thing, kind of how we think of this trade, and even how Seattle thinks, they didn't waste much time giving Noah Fant the 5th-year option. They picked it up without even having him in for a day of OTAs.
So it's a no-brainer. It was $6 million, and plus the fact that he was part of the reason you're
the centerpiece of the trade.
To him, he's the center. To them, he's the centerpiece of the trade, I think.
Outside of number 9.
Yeah. If Drew Lock works out, it's a bonus for them. But Noah Fant is the piece of value that made them say, okay, at least we're getting something. And then Shelby Harris is going to be a good plugger for them. So.
Yeah, but Shelby's on that last year of his deal too, right?
Yeah, because he re-signed. He was a 3-year deal when he re-signed last year.
Okay, so Drew's on the last year of his deal. Noah's on the last year of his deal.
Shelby could be because this is the second of third year. But you're right. They do have one more year if they want to pick it up.
Okay, and then you get obviously the 2 first-round picks, which are the real centerpiece of the trade. But
not next year's.
Didn't Dre'Mont also say, like, he was like, guys, we got Russ, and then people are like, who got traded?
Well, that's for everybody. There was for the heart probably went in their mouth a little bit.
Yeah,
right.
Thinking, oh God, don't let it be me. Don't let it.
Well,
be me.
Dre'Mont went home. I don't know if he's married, a wife, girlfriend, whatever. Whoever he talked to that night, he probably said, they want an interior defensive lineman. Thank God it wasn't me. Thank God it wasn't me.
And I did hear that Seattle wanted him.
Of course.
Seattle wanted him, and that was actually a couple weeks before the trade happened.
Good job on George Paton, because I would have just been like, who? Oh, yeah, you just hit whoever you want.
I would have folded too. Yep. And not put up, I wouldn't have thought that I was like getting pushed around. I would have thought still I was pushing them around.
Right, you're like, Dre'Mont Jones, Drew Lock, and Noah Fant? For real?
Yeah, seriously. Exactly. Even Dre'Mont Jones, Quinn Meinerz is another guy who Seattle was interested in.
There's a reason why we kept talking about Dre'Mont Jones, even when it was the Aaron Rodgers conversation, about Dre'Mont being somebody who went back in a trade, because pieces of value, young interior pass rusher, cost control, all those things, and a premium skill.
And on top of that, what did we just talk about him today? We talked about him as potentially a $17 million player. That's what he could be. And the Broncos got to keep him instead of an older Shelby Harris. Love Shelby, but a $10 million defensive lineman. 9, actually.
I mean, Jarrell Casey was here for so little of the time, and in the COVID year, we forgot about him. But I think Dre'Mont's head toward a very similar career.
The one negative memory I'll ever have of the Russell Wilson trade is how many people snitch tagged Shelby Harris on me.
Oh,
because I posted the meme that was like looking at who the Broncos gave up for Russell Wilson, and there's the guy who goes, "Oh no!" Anyway,
right. And then people were tagging,
and
Shelby.
people are like, "Wow, you're not gonna miss at Shelby Harris." I'm like, "What is wrong with you people? What is wrong with you?
Shame on them.
Stop snitch tagging." All right, I think that's gonna wrap it up for us today. Oh, last second super chat from Bojo. Make me hungry for pizza.
Yeah.
Saw that tweet last week, Mace. Really hated seeing that. Keeping you, man. We love you. Also, we need that 1B with Pookie being 1A. He can't play 17 games. Yep, Mike Boone.
Yeah.
And Mike Boone, or you can get that guy in the 4th. You can get him in the 5th because look, you got your 1A in Javonte Williams in the 2nd.
Yep.
You didn't get him in the 1st. He wasn't a top 5 pick. You can get a good 1B in day 3, and especially in this draft.
Yep.
But they've been looking at running backs. We know that they visited with both the Georgia running backs in the draft, for example. So I think if they stand pat at 115, 116 with those 2 picks in round 4, one of them is a running back.
Absolutely. All right. That is going to wrap it up for us today on the DNVR Broncos podcast. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. Hit us with a thumbs up on your way out. We will catch you tomorrow on the show. And once again, don't snitch tag on people.